of Governors has tried saying no mask, no service. We agree that there should be proper containment measures in this country. We want to urge Kenyans wherever they are. And Mr. Speaker, many young people thought this COVID will only kill the old people or 58 years or 60. We have seen even as young people, as our age dropping dead, as we have been told, Mr. Speaker, and this is very sad. So it means we have seen even children as young as 1-month-old babies being infected by COVID pandemic. So, Mr. Speaker, I think what we want to call upon Kenyans, let us follow Ministry of Health protocols, let us social distance, let us wear a mask when it's in public. And I think we did pass, Mr. Speaker, the regulations and that were being brought that if you are found in a public place without mask, you must be fined. And I think we need to make Kenyans be disciplined. Mr. Speaker, when you go to villages and across the counties, and colleagues will tell you this, that funerals are on the full-fledged, everything has returned to normal. When you go baby showers, birthdays, weddings, and many others, Mr. Speaker, all these things have gone to normalcy. I think we need to restrict ourselves. And in fact, for example, funeral, Mr. Speaker, the government should reduce because we are a nuclear family. We are not as westernized as they want to make 15 per. I saw those regulations, Mr. Speaker. They should at least make not more than 100, but not less than 50 for a funeral function in anywhere across the country. For the wedding, you can make even 10 or 15 so that, now Kenyans have a habit of doing WhatsApp, Arambes and everything. Now it's making life cheaper because you're having a few things. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage that the government should come hard on the issue of social catering, the issue of weddings, the issue of funeral, the issue of social catering so that we can. And I hope our colleagues, either people who are promoting BBI or not, will be able to adhere to still strict of 60 days that we have. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we want to urge governors that they need to be creative. By all means on how to fight COVID pandemic in this era, Mr. Speaker. Even as we go, and I want to agree that, Mr. Speaker, we have seen secondary schools like Olanya High School, I think somewhere in Busia, where 52 students have tested positive. We should look, and I am happy that the Chair of Education, Dr. Milgo, is in the House, that we should also have a pragmatic way on how to protect our children who are in grade 4 up to class 8, those who are in Form 4, those who are doing their national university examination. I think the Committee of Education should be able to provide this country on measures that we can put in place to ensure our children are in a safer environment. And even as we are to the festive season, Mr. Speaker, and I know, Mr. Speaker, you might host us in the course of this month for some ceremony. Mr. Speaker, we hope we will be able to social distance and be able to enjoy the ceremony without threatening the Ministry of Health protocols. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Faria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I wish to thank Senator Malala for bringing this statement. Mr. Speaker, this pandemic is real, and it is really finishing our people. But what is more important is that also because of the economic impact of this, people's nutritional levels have gone down, and as a result, even other opportunistic diseases can kill people more easily than even COVID itself, Mr. Speaker, because of the economic impact. Kenyans can't afford their meals, Mr. Speaker. In July 2020, Mr. Speaker, my senator brought a statement about a senior employee of Wajir County Health who succumbed to COVID-19 because there was no enough oxygen in that county, Mr. Speaker. I understand there are even ventilator machines, but there is no oxygen in the county. Which is more cheaper, a ventilator machine or an oxygen cylinder? Surely there are some critical questions that we need to ask ourselves that needs responses, Mr. Speaker. The other thing is, if we in my own county, Mr. Speaker, the allocation of COVID fund that was allocated to Wajir County, 98% of that fund was spent within 3 months after getting that funds. So where did that money go, Mr. Speaker? We really need to, and it hurts me so much to say that the people who are responsible to make sure accountability happens in this country are failing their job, Mr. Speaker. The EACC, the DCI, Those are the kind of people you should rein on to find out what happened. Auditor General, when they were doing their special audit on KEMSA, they should have extended that audit to all the countries in terms of the COVID. And not only do a normal audit, Mr. Speaker, they should have done a forensic audit so that you can trace what happened to that funds. But Mr. Speaker, in this country, we will not die of COVID-19. We will die more of as impact of corruption in this country, Mr. Speaker. And this is an issue that we need to address, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is also this issue around, now the Minister of Health has said there is no inter-county transfer of patients from one county to another. This is a special message to our MCAs. If you do not do a proper oversight, and the COVID catches you while you're in your own county, you're on your own. So don't even think about all the people you represent. Think about even for yourself that this is going to affect you. My plea to our MCAs, please make sure that your oversight on COVID is extended. Make sure that when you're looking at the budget, I'm sure most of the counties will do a supplementary budget, given that the budget delayed. Make sure that whatever fund that is allocated to COVID goes to COVID and not any other thing. Mr. Speaker, even in terms of the emergency funds that counties have, Mr. Speaker, instead of, giving people in terms of to respond to drought and other things, instead of using cash to pay people, counties buy expired food to give to people who are already in a bad situation, Mr. Speaker, who are starving and who have suffered the impact of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, this is really appalling, Mr. Speaker, that we still, in this century, we're still just, struggling with corruption, and people who are supposed to take care of all this have failed, Mr. Speaker. The other thing is, Mr. Speaker, I didn't get an opportunity to contribute to the statement about NHIF cover. I had asked for it. Mr. Speaker, that is critical for people to survive this COVID. Because, it is part of the government helping people to actually, one of the things we should have, one of the directive we should have gone is when the COVID fund came, NHIF should have been allocated much more so that they can cover more people. Can you imagine people are struggling economically? And when they go to hospital, NHIF does not cover, and then what? Where do they go? And then we, as people who are representative of our constituents or our county, I feel we are not doing enough, because who is there to speak for these people who are really suffering, Mr. Speaker? And I also, Mr. Speaker, thank our President for shortening the time of bars and restaurants, because, truth be told, somebody who is drunk will never know how to social distance or how to take care of himself. I think that is an area that I think we need to applaud His Excellency for ensuring that this happens. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I wish to support the Senator of Kakamega for bringing this matter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Isaac Maura.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement by Senator Malala. And just today, we were going through CPIC reports of the Kiambu County Assembly, and we were very shocked to realize the irregularities that are happening in these county assemblies. The bodies are supposed to be oversighting, the various counties and county government. For example, in Kiambu County, there are 2 clerks, and one of them, it's not very clear how that person was recruited. Can you imagine? Two clerks. And we were surprised to see some company there called Malin that was paid 1.5 million, and then about 700,000 was paid, 800 was put in a suspense account, and then paid to multiple people, multiple banks. So this thuggery and stealing is real, very real. And I don't know what we are going to do as a country. Because our counties, to be very honest and very sincere, they don't have capacity. And when we say capacity, we don't mean people who have degrees and big titles. No. It is the tenacity and the propensity to continuously do something in a predictable manner. So we don't have institutions in this country. We don't have institutions for devolution. That's the truth. And I know that we want to give more monies to counties, and of course, you see, if monies are devolved, they will still find a way of transforming the landscape, because even if they are misappropriated, people will build houses. They will also go to those private hospitals and pay people, because they are more privileged, and the public hospitals will be having a lot of hemorrhage. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely saddened, because now if you ask Kenyans, I've just come from being with people at Githurai market there, and if you tell people wear your masks, they don't want to listen to you. We were having a walk of some persons with disabilities who have walked for 40 kilometers from Nairobi to Etaithie in Thika, fundraising for a school that helps the needy. People no longer care. People are already doing their normal businesses. And I don't think I would want to really also, as Senator Nyamunga said, to blame county governments. It's just the culture of impunity. The coincidence, Mr. Speaker, that when the monies from KEMSA were misappropriated, it's also the time the numbers went down, also made people to become skeptical about this COVID-19. Because how comes when the monies were being eaten, it's also when Corona was going down. So right now, people are saying, hii pia ni mpango mwingine wa watu kukuliwa pesa. So that's what people are saying. And when you look at the people who are dying, some of them are prominent, and sometimes I think we as a country have this tendency of celebrating people who are more prominent than others. There are so many others also who are dying in the villages, and nobody actually cares. Now, maybe until a member of parliament or a senator falls dead is when the country will wake up to and listen. Because maybe that has become our culture. And you look at Kenyatta Universal Teaching and Referral Hospital, it is overwhelmed. Beds are actually full. Mr. Speaker, I was the first in this country to declare that we had actually about 115 to be precise, ICU beds by the time Corona hit us. And you could see Oparanya, my good friend, and Cyrus Oguna, the government spokesperson, they were contradicting me. They wanted to show as if I was a liar. And they were saying we have 300, and then there's some nebulous statement that governors and the national government is using called isolation beds. You see, you keep on hearing isolation beds. What's the difference between an isolation bed, a normal hospital bed, and a COVID-19 ICU bed? And the politics of entrepreneurship could not even have our county governments and the national government procure ventilators from the students who made them in KU, my former university. Because then you must procure from outside. One ventilator, 5 million shillings. So you create some scarcity so that people can actually benefit from the gravy train. So, Mr. Speaker, this is really serious. At some point, this disease was seen to be a disease of color. It was seen as if it's a white man's disease. Actually, they celebrated and said we are going to die and will be buried with gunny bags. Certainly, this second wave is more serious. I saw China trying to prostitute itself by saying they have managed the COVID-19 better. They should be ashamed of themselves because it's emanated from them. And if there are containment measures, they owe it as a measure of public good that they should teach other countries also to contain this pandemic. Because it started from Wuhan. It's a Wuhan disease. But it also, it's an indictment on our governance process and the whole issue of universal health care. So that then what we should be asking ourselves is not to add another chapter in the book of lamentation, is to really call to action. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 ad hoc committee tenure should be extended. Yesterday, I know Senator Kasanga gave a report that was tabled on the 29th of September here, but I would ask that this committee should continue because it is the only repository within the legislature that is looking into this matter, in an active on a day-to-day basis, so that we can hear submissions of what is happening actually in the country. Mr. Speaker, I think one of the things that we need to ask ourselves is, in the ensuing period, because we've had COVID now, this is the month of November, since March, what are the remedies? What are our research institutions doing? What is KEMRI doing? I mean, by now we should be having some mitigation measures that assuage the effects of COVID. But I think as we are so used to getting opportunities and becoming what you call, disasterpreneurs, everybody looked at how to siphon out masks. By the way, do you notice that all of a sudden masks, the price of masks has actually gone up again? Carrefour was selling a packet at 500. Now today morning it was 1,000. And those ones that you are buying on the streets at 50 bob, soon you will also start buying them at 100. So I think we are a country that has, perfected the art of, benefiting from other people's miseries. It has happened with the maize scandals, as you heard. It has happened with the NYS, our young people. It happened with the Anglo leasing. And I think we need to ask ourselves, when will this hemorrhage, seepage and leakage of public resources actually continue? How will it stop, actually? Because if we are always like this, we've passed legislation here. So it's not a question of legislation. There's disaster risk reduction legislation that we worked on here since the time I was in the 11th Parliament with Mutula Kilonzo and Sakaja and others here, senators. And yet, this is a disaster that cannot be contained because by the end of the day, people do not matter about regulations. They do not care about procurement rules as provided for in Article 227 of the Constitution. What is most important is to actually amplify what is happening on the ground so that people can actually, benefit. How do you, for example, explain what we've just been told by Senator Wetangula here, that somebody can go and actually take facilities from a private hospital, like the case I think we saw in Isiolo, of a whole governor going to take facilities from a private hospital, you come and take photos, you post them, and then you start saying that that is actually a public hospital. In fact, there was a very funny story when the buzzword was for investors in the counties and investment conferences. One governor, who I'm not going to name, went to Oswald Academy here in the Westlands and postured with some students who had gone to be taken some HIV test and said that he had just met investors in Nairobi. This is the theater of the absurd, Mr. Speaker. This country, we need to really look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, do we actually take ourselves seriously? So, Mr. Speaker, today, we don't even know how many people actually could have died out of COVID-19. I know we are very keen to start our referendum and BBI campaigns, and I'm sure here we could argue who is for or against. But by the end of the day, I think we as a country are facing a monumental challenge. In fact, my fear is that, Mr. Speaker, the economy may collapse. If you look at our public debt ceiling, and we were here, Senator Faria, you can remember, now it was at 6.1 trillion, at least the official figures. It is now closing into 7 trillion. We have spent a whole 1 trillion shillings for the last 1 year. We are going back to the IMF to borrow more. And you see, the gap there is about 3 trillion. So if you have expended 1 trillion, you remember we took the ceiling to 9 trillion, and our GDP per capita is 98 billion US dollars, less than 100 billion. What does that mean? Soon we are going to exhaust. We'll actually be a net economy, negative, because, the KRA is always reporting the slowdown of the collection of monies. They have missed their target recently, the last quarter, by 40 billion. And yet, government is going on with business as usual. We have not seen a lot of fiscal consolidation and budget restructuring that would enable us to have enough fiscal space to avert this pandemic. Every expenses, even this parliament itself, ceded about 2 billion shillings. What is the net effect of that? So, Mr. Speaker, we've got to really wake up and smell coffee. If we continue with this pandemic, for the next 6 months, I don't think we'll have an economy to talk about. Even the 50 billion that we said we are going to actually devolve, where will that be gotten from? So, Mr. Speaker, let us actually reconstitute, or rather give more time to the COVID-19 committee. And we as the Senate, we actually need to even have a kamukunji on this matter, on a serious matter, so that we can put our heads together and in the same manner in which we gave the country direction when the National Assembly had gone to slumber, when everybody was fearing to make comments and we gave the country direction, I think the Senate can still rise up to the occasion and give a way forward. Mr. Speaker, I support and I thank you.
Honorable Senators, as you can note, we are past the statement hour. For those honorable senators who will wish to make contributions on this statement by Malala, to restrict their contributions to 3 minutes. Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kunipa fursa hii kuchangia taarifa ya Senator Malala kuhusiana na ugonjwa wa corona. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni masikitiko makubwa kwamba nchi yetu kwa sasa imeendelea kuona mkurupuko wa visa zaidi vya corona na vingi vikisababisha vifo. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikizungumzia kaunti ya Mombasa ambako ninatoka, ni jambo la kusikitisha Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba karibu kila siku kwa muda sasa wa siku 10 nimekuwa nikishuhudia visa vya watu wanaofariki ambao wengine ni watu walio karibu sana na mimi. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikizungumzia wiki iliyokwisha siku ya Ijumaa mosi alifariki diwani mmoja wa zamani wa eneo la Majengo ambaye anaitwa Said Matias. Baraza la kaunti ya bunge la kaunti ya Mombasa, Mheshimiwa Spika, limefungwa hivi sasa kwa sababu kulipatikana karibu visa 8 vya maambukizi ya corona na wengine wengi Mheshimiwa Spika ambao wanaendelea kuathirika na vile vile kufariki dunia kwa sababu ya ugonjwa huu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia huduma za afya pia zimeendelea kuzorota kwa sababu hospitali yote ikiwamo hospitali kuu ya mkoa wa Pwani zimejaa wagonjwa wanaohusiana na corona. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, vifaa vya matibabu katika kaunti ya Mombasa vimeathirika sana pakubwa kwa sababu madaktari pia wameathirika na ugonjwa, manasi wanaohudumia wagonjwa wameathirika na ugonjwa. Kwa hivyo hivi sasa hali imekuwa tete sana katika kaunti ya Mombasa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukirudi nyuma ni kuwa hapo nyuma kidogo tuliweza kuteteleka na tukaacha kufuata yale maagizo ambayo yametolewa. Kwa mfano, tuliruhusu watu kukutana kiolela, tukaruhusu watu kutembea mjini bila barakoa, tukaruhusu watu kutotumia sanitizer, na hivi sasa Mheshimiwa Spika, hali ambayo inatokea katika maeneo ya burudani, yani zile bar na sehemu nyingineo, ni kwa watu wanaendelea kusongamana kwa wingi bila kuchukua tahadhari zozote. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ni masikitiko kwamba hali imekuwa hivi na hatuwezi kuendelea kulalamika kuhusu hali hii bila ya kuchukua hatua za kisawasawa. Nimefurahi Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba leo Rais ameweza kuregesha curfew kuanzia saa 4 usiku mpaka saa 10 alfajiri, lakini hiyo haitoshi Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu bila ya askari ama polisi kuhakikisha kwamba maelezo ya curfew yanafuatiliwa, itakuwa ni sawa na kumpigia mbuzi gitaa, kwa sababu utapata kwamba maeneo mengi ya burudani Mheshimiwa Spika yanaendelea kutoa huduma kwa wananchi baada ya masaa ya curfew na hakuna jambo lolote ambalo linafanyika. Mheshimiwa Spika, pia tumeona kwamba kumekuwa na ulegevu katika vitengo vya huduma za afya katika, kwa mfano, public health departments hazijachukua hatua za muafaka za kuhakikisha kwamba wanaendelea kuwahubiria wananchi masuala ya huduma ambazo zinatakana kufanyika, kama zile protocol ambazo zinatakana kufanyika ili kuhakikisha kwamba mtu hawezi kupata corona. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, tungeweza kurudi hapo katika public health committee, public health department, ili wahakikishe kwamba wananchi wanajulishwa zile sehemu ambazo ugonjwa huu watu wameathirika, waweze kutiliwa maanani zaidi ili kuhakikisha kwamba mkurupuko huu hawezi kuendelea. Na mwisho Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba kuna dawa ambazo zinaweza kutumika, sio tiba, lakini ambazo zinaweza kutumika kwa wale ambao wameweza kupata maambukizi lakini hawajaonesha ishara za ugonjwa. Na hii Mheshimiwa Spika ingeweza kusisitizwa ili kuhakikisha kwamba wale ambao wameamua kujihudumia nyumbani.
Senator Abshiro Alake.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's with great sadness and sorrow that I actually contribute to this. But I'd like to congratulate Senator Malala for bringing this up, because this is not just a matter in Kakamega or in the Western region or in the populous regions. This is a matter that's also affecting far-flung areas such as Isiolo and even, I'm sure, your county. Mr. Speaker, of course, we have to blame somebody. When somebody stands up as county governments or as governors or as health practitioners and takes responsibility and asks for leadership, they must then deliver on that. I was just looking at what my county, who is led by a medical doctor, who is the chairperson of the Council of Governors for Health, who has been said to have hired hospital beds. And right now in Isiolo County, and I know Senator Malala mentioned the looming health crisis in Kakamega. For us, it's not looming, it's been there. Senator Malala spoke of a deplorable situation and deterioration. We did not even get to a point where we prepared enough, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I looked at what was promised, even under UHC, Isiolo has been one of the very lucky counties. We have been a pilot county for UHC. We have been recipient of lots of dollars from the US government and other partners because of the centrality, the diversity, and all other issues that afflict Isiolo County. We were promised, just under UHC alone, improved access to healthcare by equipping and staffing new and existing facilities, eradicating corruption, modernizing healthcare. We were promised to create equipment and department. We were promised facelifts of Isiolo Referral Hospital. Mr. Speaker, none of that exists. Just a few days ago, we've been losing a lot of people. We lost a nurse of Isiolo Hospital for lack of ICU bed. This is when we raised these issues and we visited as COVID committee, we were told that we were witch hunting the governor.
What's it, Senator Mazayo?
Speaker, asante Bwana Speaker kwa kunipa fursa hii. Niko na hoja ya nidhamu Bwana Speaker. Bwana Speaker, sisi ikiwa tuko kipao mbele kuongea habari ya mambo ya COVID-19, ni lazima hili bunge lenyewe liweze kutimiza hizo sheria za COVID-19. Na tumeongea hapa habari ya COVID-19 na nikasisitiza kwanza kwa habari ya mambo ya utamaduni. Tukasema ya kwamba bunge lazima lichukue mkondo wa mbele kwa mambo ya utamaduni. Tumekuja upande wa na tukija kwa upande wa bunge, upande wa COVID-19, Bwana Speaker, unaweza kuona hii barakoa ambayo nimeshika kwa mkono wangu wa kushoto. Hii barakoa ni ile ambayo tunainunua nje, ambao ni ya shilingi 100. Lakini Bwana Speaker, kuna uzembe unaendelea hapa ndani ya bunge. Kwa sababu hizi barakoa watu wanapewa katika bunge, hata ukiangalia hawa makarani wetu waliovaa hapa, hizi barakoa zao ni zile fake. Ni zile vitambara ambavyo vinatengezwa kule River Road. Ni vitambara ambavyo havina faida na wala haviwezi kupinga hii mambo ya COVID. Wewe angalia hii vile iko. Angalia bei yake vile iko, angalia kitambara hichi tulipopewa, na sisi tunasema kwamba hapa hii mambo ya COVID ichukuliwe seriously. We are not taking this thing seriously sisi kama bunge. Angalia wewe, nataka Bwana Speaker, ikiwa utaniruhusu hii kitu tuweke hapa na ikaguliwe na watu wa afya, iambiwe kama hii kweli ina comply ina katika zile vitu kama N95, kama hii nilioshika kwa mkono huu. Bwana Speaker, madharau kama haya, sisi ni wabunge, ni waheshimiwa wa kitaifa. Na Bwana Speaker, hii inaweza kufanya wabunge wengi wakafa hapa ndani ya bunge. Na unless imechukuliwa seriously, hawa bunge unaona mbele yangu, kina Dr. Milgo, kina Farhia, yule dadangu kule Halake, wote hawa wanaweza kufa hawa kwa sababu kwa sababu ya kudanganywa kutumia vitu kama hivi hapa ndani ya bunge. Kwa hiyo hata nikiwaangalia hivi unaona vile wamevaa, hawakutumia hizi za hapa bunge. Na wengine kama sisi tukija kama tumenunua kutoka nje, kama tumetumia kwa siku nzima, tunataka tupumue hali ya hewa safi. Tunataka kugeuza. Sasa hatuwezi kugeuza kwa sababu hizi barakoa tulizonazo afadhali hizi kuliko hizi ambazo hata hazina maana yoyote ambazo zimeletwa na hili bunge letu. Bwana Spika, asante sana kwa hiyo hoja ya nidhamu.
Order, honorable senators. Senator Mazayo, what was out of order? What was out of order on the contributions of Senator Alake? We have noted your concerns. Senator Alake, proceed with your contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope I'll be added time. Mr. Speaker, as I said, it's with great sadness. Just 3 days ago, we lost a very prominent, very decent human being, even though this is in addition to a lot of people that we have been losing in our county. We've lost our nurse. We've lost so many innocent lives in the county of Isiolo, which has been touted. And I would like to repeat what Senator Wetangula has said. Our governors are showing off on TVs and bragging and gloating about how they have managed and they're prepared, but that does not exist on the ground, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just 2 days ago, in addition to the many, and may their souls rest in peace, we lost Mr. Abdi Boru, a very good friend, a father, a brother, and somebody that the county really values and who has worked in that county in the conservation sector for many, many years. And he died en route to Nairobi in Nyeri. If indeed Isiolo County has facilities, why would somebody that in fact works for that county be dying en route to Nairobi? It is sad, it's unacceptable, it's deplorable, and really our county governments have blood on their hand. We condemn that. When as COVID committee members we went to Isiolo County and we witnessed what human rights defenders told us that were hired beds, we were told that we are witch hunting the governor and that we want some of the people want to be governors. But Mr. Speaker, this kind of impunity from our county governments, especially those that understand what health indicators are, especially those that are health practitioners, it is sad, it's unacceptable, it is really something that something that has to be done. We as this House, we're supposed to be looking out and oversighting county governments. I think it's about time we stopped lamenting and flexed muscle so that our governors know. But that said, we as people of counties also need to take individual responsibility, as CS Kagwe has told us. We keep ourselves safe because nobody has our backs. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to pass my deep condolences to our friend Abdi, who passed on while trying to access facilities outside of Isiolo County to Nairobi, but did not make it. He's not alone. He is representing all, and even others that have been trying to get access to facilities, Mr. Speaker. I know death is most painful for his family, but we also, as the people of Isiolo, constitutes his extended family. Isiolo lost somebody that's very dear to us. Isiolo lost somebody that really has provided leadership that's very different.
Senator Alice Milgo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. If Matsad had not left out, I've asked what it was in order to bring a use mask before the House, but it is unfortunate he left immediately. I hope that is not a use mask because it is supposed to be disposed safely. Also, I brought a statement to that effect. Okay. Thank you for giving me this chance to also support this statement. And I wish to say that COVID has been here for the last over 7 months. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I think the lack of preparedness right across the counties is actually one thing. And maybe I would say that as time went on, I think people went back to the original issues of being unpleasant. And in any case, it is quite unfortunate that we were able to send up to the tune of 5 billion to the counties, and right now we are not able to account for. We saw how people really chased, how ESC were chasing cancer, and actually they forgot the counties themselves who consume 5 billion that is not there. A few minutes ago, Cherarge was talking about Northeastern. He forgot that there was a county in the large Rift Valley where the Ministry of Health was supposed to inspect that county, and throughout the night they spent time ferrying pads, ferrying medical equipments to the purported health center that was supposed to be inspected. Thank God NSIS was able to establish that, and that one aborted. But then that is the scenario in our counties, and it is quite unfortunate that to date there are no pads, and the medical, or rather the service providers are still actually having a challenge even to get PPEs. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a worrying trend that we are still seeing those health workers that are actually in the front line still striking, or rather all the time when we open our TVs, we find that they are actually proposing that they will go on strike because of the fact that they have not gotten risk allowances, there are no PPEs, even their salaries are not paid, and even they are living in deplorable conditions. Right as we are speaking, I think this condition has not affected Kakamega alone. It has affected people right across the counties. In my county, we lost a CEC who was working in Kakamega, and that was a sole bread.
Senator Naomi Wako.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I stand to support this statement, very important statement on COVID-19 and the number of people who have lost their lives as a result of this. I also congratulate Senator Malala. Much has been said by my colleagues, senators, and Mr. Speaker. The status of COVID in our country is serious. COVID is a reality. It is with us, and we've lost many people in all the counties. And if you look at the hospitals, the health facilities, like in my county and many others, we do not have beds, ICU beds, ventilators are not there, and most of the time people try to rush to Nairobi, but they die even before they reach Nairobi. So there is need for us to urge the county government to take this seriously and take care of our citizens. Mr. Speaker, because of time, I'll try to jump from one whatever to the other. When we look at our schools, I am happy that I'm seated next to the chair of education. Parents can no longer trust the Ministry of Education with the CS, who keeps on changing and saying different things. It is good that our president has said that the schools will continue under serious whatever, but the challenge is, how sure are we that the schools will observe and our children are safe? Is it possible for the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health to work together to ensure that the children who are going to school will be safe and well protected? Again, Mr. Speaker, here in Parliament, we've already lost some few members of staff. Are we safe enough even to continue with what we are doing? Yes, it is our right to give service to the nation, but if already, or maybe almost many of our staff are already in hospital and some have already died, there is need for us to stress on even our own and the protection of the members of staff here in Parliament. Again, our president has given measures that have to be observed from today. Yes, 10 to 9 curfew up to January is good enough. But Kenyans have proved to be very irresponsible. And many people, when they sit outside there, they blame the politicians, they blame the leaders. But I just want to tell Kenyans.
Senator Gertrude Musuruve.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to give a comment on Senator Malala's statement. And Honorable Speaker, I want to say candidly that the issue of COVID is not an issue of Kakamega County only. It is an issue that is affecting all counties, the 47 counties. And Honorable Speaker, allow me to say that the fact that people are dying in counties because of COVID, it is not reason enough to say that county hospitals should now be taken over by the national government, Honorable Speaker. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, yes, people are dying of COVID. There is need for all county executives to ensure that they commit in the national, the county budgets, some amount of money that will be used for the purpose of even buying COVID materials to people. Honorable Speaker, I've been in Kakamega County and I donated a lot of masks to people in my area in Lugari. But what I realized, Honorable Speaker, even when you donate masks, people just decide to keep the masks inside of their pockets they are not wearing. So they become very careless with their own health. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, on a serious note, that there's need for us to engage the health workers in the counties to raise awareness. And Honorable Speaker, county governments should ensure that they bring on board health workers who can go door to door, sensitizing people and making sure that people get the message right. Because sometimes people just ignore information that comes, in county governments. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that when you look at Kakamega County, it has a lot of pluses with regard to developments, with regards to roads, with regards to even health centers. And the fact that a few selected centers have been brought on the floor of this House, Honorable Speaker, is not reason enough to state that the county government of Kakamega should surrender the national hospital, the county hospital, to the national government. It is actually a statement that is not well-meaning, Honorable Speaker. We have to ensure that health is a devolved function and Mwananchi, the common man, is able to receive services, Honorable Speaker. Our mandate as a Senate is to ensure that there's service delivery to Mwananchi. And having service delivery to Mwananchi is trying to see how we can improve county hospitals, trying to see how common Mwananchi can reach the hospitals. But when we say that we want to surrender to the national government, we are abdicating our roles as senators, which we should not do, because we are mandated to ensure that county government
Senator Kajwang Moses.
Madam Speaker, as I comment on this statement by Senator Malala, allow me also to mourn with those families that have lost loved ones in the midst of the COVID pandemic, not just in Kenya, but across the globe. Madam Speaker, if you're honest with each other, this disease, this virus is in our midst. It is in Parliament. It is all over in our communities. It is only that the stigma associated with it does not allow us to come out openly. And it is not just the stigma. It is the process of managing an infection, particularly for those people who live in informal settlements, that keep them away from full disclosure and thereby making them spreaders and super spreaders of the disease. This disease has taught us how helpless and how clueless humanity is. Madam Speaker, the confusion of our national government, added to the cluelessness of our county government, is a source and a sense of embarrassment. The only saving grace is that when you look at far stronger economies, we are seeing a similar state of cluelessness and confusion. Madam Speaker, we must thank God Because the fact that we are alive today and that we have not died out of COVID is not because we are stronger or more intelligent as Africans. It is by the grace of God. If we were getting infection rates at 10,000, 20,000 per day, as you have seen in other countries, if you're going to lose 10,000 people per day or 5,000 people per day, as you're seeing in other countries, we would be having the worst crisis that African economies have ever had. It sometimes makes us then believe that surely there must be a God in heaven who watches over the weak, particularly the African countries, because we do not have the means to take care of ourselves in this pandemic. Governments have tried at federal level, at national level, and at subnational level. Madam Speaker, the call to centralize health service provision in counties goes against the grain of devolution. This House, we stood up firmly opposing the transfer of functions from Nairobi City County to the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. Recentralization of health service delivery is not going to be a solution. Madam Speaker, indeed, the only recentralization I would support is on human resource management. And that is why in the building bridges, we are talking of a health service commission. But we must further decentralize, particularly issues to do with procurement. There is no reason why procurement of pharmaceuticals and health products should be sitting at KEMSA. These are some of the problems that are facing county governments and are making them unable to deliver to the citizens. Madam Speaker, in as much as we need to deal with this issue, let us strengthen our county governments. Let us give them resources on time. Let us give them the leeway to do procurement. Let us give them the necessary human resource so that they can respond appropriately. Finally, Madam Speaker, it's also important that even as we reflect on these matters, we join other Kenyans in observing
I guess your time is up. I think no more interventions as far as that statement is concerned. And we therefore move to statements pursuant to Standing Order 51, 1B. The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Tourism, Trade and Industrialization, to make a statement relating to the activities of the committee. I guess the Chairperson is not there, and we therefore defer that. We come to next order.
Adoption of the 9th progress report of the ad hoc committee on the COVID-19 situation in Kenya.
Senator Musurube, I am informed that you had a balance of 10 minutes. $15.
Honorable Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this chance to comment on the report by the chair of the ad hoc committee. Honorable Speaker, the chair really elaborated on the workings of the committee concerning the impact of health on in the various places that they worked and they interrogated. But I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that even as the committee does its report, it should not be conclusive without touching on the impact of COVID, on education. And education is a social economic right. And education cannot wait, Honorable Speaker. We cannot talk matters health and we fail to touch on it. Because even when we look at education and when you look at health, they both fall in the same clause 43, in the same article 43, that talks about socioeconomic rights. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that education and health are twin sisters, that when we take our children to school, we endeavor that they'll be healthy. We endeavor that they'll be safe. We'll endeavor that they'll be secure. But, Honorable Speaker, this issue of COVID and education was not touched. Right now, schools have opened. And there's a lot of talk, and there's evidence that our children are going to schools, and especially children from lowly backgrounds. They're going to school without masks. They're going to school without, in some schools where there's no running water, Honorable Speaker. And when it comes to water, water is also in the same Article 43 that talks about socio-economic rights, that talks about health. Health is one of the big 4 agenda, Honorable Speaker. So I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that even though this committee has finished its work, it has not finished its work completely, because we must touch on the issue of education. We must touch on the impact of education, of COVID in education, because education is essential. Without education, our children are not going to school. Then, as a country, we will lag behind. Honorable Speaker, senators have talked about county governments and the impact of COVID on health, but we need to see also what is the impact of impact of COVID in health, in educational institutions? What are county governments doing about it? Because, Honorable Speaker, and I have evidence, I was in the counties just recently, and I visited schools in my area. It was painful, Honorable Speaker. You will not believe that some children were in school even without masks. Some children were in school. The masks they had were improvised. Some of them were even using handkerchiefs to just cover their mouths, and they're not even covering their nose, Honorable Speaker. So there's a lot of ignorance in the counties concerning the use of, concerning preventing themselves. Now, I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that there's need for county governments to ensure that in the county budget, they have an emergency fund that should actually be passed, and this fund should be for the purpose of preparing children going to school, for the purpose of buying masks, for the purpose of ensuring there's running water. And, Honorable Speaker, it is unfortunate that water is a devolved function. And even though it's a devolved function, there are so many schools without water. And, Honorable Speaker, I remember I was even talking to my chair education, expressing my disappointment, expressing my anguish that there are so many schools in my counties without running water. Honorable Speaker, we cannot talk about COVID and we fail to touch on the issue of water, because children interact. They're interactive human beings, and you cannot stop children from interacting with each other. So if they're interacting with each other, if they don't have masks, if they cannot wash their hands, if they cannot sanitize, if they don't have soap, Honorable Speaker, those children will be infected of COVID. They will infect their teachers will infect their families, the children will infect also their significant others. Honorable Speaker, this is an issue that should actually be handled candidly. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, there's need to even have a harder committee that investigates what exactly is going on in the county with regard to education, so that we save our children, so that education goes on. And, Honorable Speaker, if we decide to play the ostrich, then so many wrongs are going to happen. Many teachers are going to die. Many children are going to die. And, Honorable Speaker, as a country, if we are not giving the baton to our children, then we are not doing very well. And if we do not take precaution, if we don't take this issue of COVID and education seriously, I want to say, Honorable Speaker, we will not have children or leaders to give the baton to. There's need for us to really see how we can actually interrogate this issue of COVID, and I'm here that Chair Education is here so that she can pursue the matter. If a proposition can be put on the floor of this House, that we have a harder committee that will investigate the issue of COVID and education, it will be very good for us, Honorable Speaker. And, Honorable Speaker, it has been very clear that even senators have spoken on the floor of this House, that because children are not going to school, many girls are getting pregnant. Many girls are finding themselves in a situation where they're getting married, not because they want, but because they find themselves in hopeless situations. Honorable Speaker, schools cannot wait. Education cannot wait. We have to look for a mechanism of ensuring that we are availing education to our children. We have to look for a mechanism of ensuring that the county governments are brought to account so that they provide water. They have a budget. Most of the time, in fact, every year, we release money to the counties. And we release money to the counties because we want service delivery to wananchi, Honorable Speaker. As a Senate, it is a mandate to ensure that even the money that is going to the counties is benefiting wananchi. Honorable Speaker, if there's no running water in the counties, then we are not doing well as a county. I want to give an example of the schools, Honorable Speaker, that I went to. I found there was no running water. I tried to engage the county government. They were so slow on this, Honorable Speaker. They didn't seem to see the priority that I was seeing as a senator, Honorable Speaker. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, we must ensure that governors even do an account, in fact, give an account of the COVID measures that they have taken in the county governments. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, even in some schools, you will be surprised that there's no furniture. You'll be surprised that there are no toilets, ECD toilets. And yet, Honorable Speaker, ECDs are a function of the county government. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, there's need for governors to actually utilize the money that is appropriated in this House and shared and disbursed to the counties in a very prudent way, so that Kenyans can feel that actually they matter in this country and that we are keen about them, Honorable Speaker. So the issue of children cannot be left behind. And Honorable Speaker, I also want to say that when you're talking about matters of health, it is also in schools, because even in schools, Honorable Speaker, there's need for children also to be fed. And in some schools, Honorable Speaker, you'll be surprised that they do not have, a feeding program for their children, even those who are in early childhood. There's need for governors to ensure that they're setting money aside for the purpose of ensuring that there's a feeding program in all schools, so that the children who are disadvantaged, the children who come from low backgrounds, the children who are not able to get a meal in their houses, they'll be, they'll find meal in schools. When they find meals in schools, we'll have actually helped them in terms of nutrition. Honorable Speaker, nutrition is very important, and the COVID committee should have also looked at how nutrition is achieved in schools, how nutrition is achieved with regard to helping children who come from vulnerable families, who come from disadvantaged families to cope with education. Honorable Speaker, I will not fail to talk about also children with disabilities. Children with disabilities are prone, and they're more at risk when it comes to getting COVID. But you'll find that most county governments do not have a priority, do not have a plan of how they can help children with disabilities. So even when schools are opening, Honorable Speaker, what runs into my mind? I ask myself, what are county governments doing about children with disabilities? Are they going to school, or are they not going to school? Are they making a follow-up on them, or are they not making a follow-up on them? So, Honorable Speaker, there is need for county governments to ensure that they're keen about the vulnerables. They're intervening to do with the vulnerables, Honorable Speaker. Because I remember in a school I went at some point, there was no EAC center. And without EAC centers, Honorable Speaker, it becomes very difficult to even place a child with a disability in a school. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, children with disabilities deserve to be in a school. Children with disabilities deserve to get nutrition. Children with disabilities deserve to even have functional skills, Honorable Speaker. And it is very painful that even in schools, special schools, county governments are not providing masks. The government is not providing masks. The government should intervene. The county government should intervene. It should be a collaborative venture of the county government, the national government, to ensure that education goes on. Education cannot wait. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I support the report, and I recommend that another ad hoc committee be formed to follow matters education. Thank you.
Senator Kajwang Moses Otieno.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support the report of the COVID committee, the special committee that we established on 31st of March 2020, and that we gave 13 very specific terms of reference. Madam Speaker, at the time of establishment of this committee, the whole world, and not just Kenya, was just coming to terms with this new virus, and the entire world was coming to terms with the pandemic and its devastating effects. You do recall, Madam Speaker, that around the 13th or 14th of March of 2020, the country went into a lockdown because of the alarming increase in numbers owing to the coronavirus. And coincidentally, Madam Speaker, 7 months later, just this afternoon, the head of state has addressed the nation and has expressed grave concern that the measures that were put in place 7 months ago seem not to be bearing fruit, that the policy directives that had been given, that the restrictions that had been put in place, and that the behavioral advisories that the head of state and all government agencies have been issuing, the citizens are not heeding them, and the situation is not getting any better. On 31st of March 2020, when this committee was established, we barely had any death cases reported. But today, Madam Speaker, 1,039 Kenyans have died from COVID, and globally, 1.21 million people have died. Leave alone those who have been infected. In Kenya, we have 57,000 infections. And that is in the context of very low testing. Every day when the CS for Health tells us the numbers that have been tested, you get statistics like 5,000 people tested, out of which 700 were found to be positive. Madam Speaker, we must scale up testing if you're going to tell the true story and paint the right picture of the COVID situation in this country. Globally, 47.5 million people have been infected. The global economy is in recession. The entire world is in shock. Nobody seems to have understood what has hit us. Far greater economies are shutting down again. They shut down in March when we had the first wave. And just this week, or in the past 1 week, we have had the United Kingdom shutting down again. We have had Germany shutting down. We have had Spain shutting down. We have had Italy shutting down. And we are sure that even the United States, once they are done with the elections, they'll probably go back to the key issue, the elephant in the room, which is the COVID situation. Therefore, Madam Speaker, this committee has been working in uncharted waters because they are dealing with a situation that is fluid. Somebody described it as flying an aeroplane and building it at the same time. Because every day we send them out to carry out an investigation, they are dealing with things that are unprecedented and issues that do not have ready answers and issues that nobody else in the world is able to deal with. But 7 months down the line, there are several lessons that we have learned. And these lessons have been laid out very well in the report of the committee. I know that we are discussing the 9th report of the committee. And one thing that I was very impressed about is that in its reporting, the committee took a thematic approach. So, for example, if you looked at the 8th report, it did not just paint an entire story about COVID, it focused on issues to do with access to food, water, and essential commodities. So the committee has helped this House to understand out of the 13 terms of reference that we had set out for them, the committee has reported consistently against those terms of reference to ensure that they remain relevant. There are certain cross-cutting issues and observations that I wish to raise as I support the report of this committee. Number one, Madam Speaker, initially, as a legislature, we focused on legislative interventions. And so we proposed a pandemic management bill, which generated a lot of excitement across the nation. You remember, Madam Speaker, that tenants had a ray of hope, knowing that the Senate and Parliament would come to their rescue so that they would not be compelled to pay rent if their incomes were not guaranteed. People who are holding credit in banking and financial institutions had the belief that Parliament was coming to their rescue. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, due to the sibling rivalry between the two houses, the pandemic management bill has not been processed with the speed that it required. There is no point coming up with a pandemic management bill 1 year or 2 years later when the pandemic has ceased to be, when it is now an epidemic. This was a moment, this was a golden moment for Parliament to act collectively, to come up with a legislative framework that would then shield the vulnerable in society. There are countries that went ahead and even put a brake on imposition of interest. And it was done through statute, not like in our situation where you are being told to go and negotiate with your bank manager. Your bank manager will only listen to you if in the past 3, 4, 5 years you've been paying faithfully. Your bank manager will want to look at your loss history, will want to look at the client history. Your bank manager will not care that you just got retrenched last week. And so, Madam Speaker, this is one opportunity that I hope that now that we are still in the throes of COVID, now that the pandemic is still with us, that we can be able to give this nation a pandemic management bill that will also guide the emergency interventions. We have established emergency funds in all our county governments. And the emergency funds are established for unforeseen circumstances. And so a pandemic would be one of those. But unfortunately, there needs to be some legislative tightening so that we can empower counties to use that emergency fund or to establish other funds with speed to be able to respond to pandemics. We do agree that a fund for management of a pandemic cannot be established with the pace of the establishment of a World Development Fund, for example, because one is about life and death and another is about efficiency of processes. We have also had an opportunity to look at policy across various sectors. And one of the areas where, Madam Speaker, I feel very embarrassed as a Kenyan and as a legislature is when it comes to our pronouncements on education policy. Prior to the return of our children to schools, for those of us whose children are in public schools or in the local system, every single day we had a CS for education, a distinguished professor, giving contradictory, conflicting information about education policy. It is extremely important that cabinet secretaries and heads of government ministries to listen to their technocrats. Indeed, Madam Speaker, we will be bringing questions here to find out whether we have a National Education Board, because that is the board, the body that is supposed to advise the CS on policy matters. It cannot be that the CS, depending on which side of the bed is woken up on, he decides that children are going back to school or not. Even the current situation, where we have our candidates in school and class 4s in school, Madam Speaker, it is still untenable. But I do agree with stakeholders who believe that we should not sacrifice education, because particularly the class 8s and the secondary school students, many of them will not come back to school. And I say this with a heavy heart, knowing that I come from a fishing area. And in those fishing communities, girls get lured to drop out of school because the men around them, and there are many opportunities around them to make money. All they need to do is to wake up early, go to the beach, receive a few gorogoros of omena, take it to the market, and they will make a margin that will be more lucrative than them staying in school. So during this pandemic, we've lost a lot of children. But the pronouncements and the policy positions did not help. It created further confusion. It has given us an opportunity to refine our policies even around commerce. Madam Speaker, I'm so excited that COVID has given electronic commerce the impetus that it had failed to get in the past. Now everyone is doing deliveries online. Payment has become cashless. We are seeing a lot of virtual meetings, even in Parliament. And so in every dark cloud, there could be a silver lining. On health, this is where I think we are learning the greatest lessons. Madam Speaker, our level of preparedness then in March was pathetic. Our level of preparedness 7 months later is more pathetic than it was in the past. I listened to the chair of the COG today in the address at the summit meeting, and he said that all county governments have exhausted their bed capacity. Remember, Madam Speaker, at the beginning of this pandemic, many counties, including mine, had 0 ICU beds. And yet this House has been appropriating billions every year to go into the managed equipment scheme and to enable the counties to improve their health facilities. And even today, you'll find counties reporting that they've got 300-bed isolation unit. When you investigate, you'll find that they have counted beds lying in dormitories of secondary and primary schools that have been shut down. What a great shame. If we can try to lie with a straight face to justify or to score some bonga points politically. The reality is that many of our counties do not have more than 20 ICU beds. And where they have more than 20 ICU beds, they're definitely taken up. But it is not just the facilities. It is the processes that we have built. Madam Speaker, today, if you went to a hospital, if you went to Jaramogi Oginga Teaching and Referral Hospital, and you're going there with malaria, you will first be subjected to a COVID test, whose results will come out in 4 days. You are lying in that hospital for 4 days, awaiting COVID results. You will die by the time the COVID results come back. Nobody is going to hospital. Nobody is going to public hospitals because we have built certain processes and put in place bureaucracy that seems aimed at denying wananchi services. It seems that we are deliberately turning wananchi away because we know we do not have the capacity to manage COVID in those institutions. This is a moment for us to reflect on health policy. And I'm glad that there's a conversation that is going on, that when it comes to health human resource, let us have a health service commission. Because you have seen, in my county, the health committee came in to intervene in a situation where county health workers have not been paid. And yet these are frontline workers. One person, one frontline health worker in my county died of suspected COVID conditions. These people, they put their necks on the line, and yet we are not paying them. And sometimes you find even the county assemblies defending the county executive for not paying health workers. If someone should be the first on the line when it comes to payments during this pandemic, it should be health service workers. In fact, we should put a covenant that senators should not get their salaries until doctors are being paid, because these are the most essential workers during this pandemic. And so we must find a different way of managing our health service professionals. And I do support the idea of establishing a health service commission that would provide a centralized pool, that will provide an opportunity for cross-county transfers, cross-county monitoring and evaluation of the health human resource sector. Procurement must be decentralized. We have seen the KEMSA haste. And unfortunately, Madam Speaker, some of our friends in the political space are the ones who walk around to KEMSA with briefcases that are empty and come out with briefcases full of cash. This is a shame. It is a collective shame. And we have had this habit of eating health funds, from HIV to malaria to tuberculosis, now to COVID. Some of the richest men in this country and women, they made money in the 80s and 90s and the 2000s by establishing NGOs that were ostensibly meant to fight HIV and AIDS and malaria and TB, using Gavi funds and global funds from other global bodies. It is shameful to steal money that is meant to provide medication and to provide services to the sick. That is a sure ticket to hell. Madam Speaker, our economy has received the biggest beating in the last 12 years. We are in a recession, our revenues are falling, our debt is rising, our GDP is contracting. We are soon not going to be a middle-income country, because a middle-income country is defined as one with a per capita GDP of $2,000 and above. With a shrinking GDP, shrinking economy, and a growing population, we are going back to a developing country. And yet, this was one of the promises we set out in Vision 2030, that we want to be a newly industrializing middle-income economy. COVID has taken us back to where we did not want to be. But it is a combination of COVID and bad politics. Madam Speaker, the President launched certain tax incentives that were aimed at easing the pain for people who are salaried, aimed at easing the pain and reducing taxes for those who are in the informal sector. But I want to say that those tax incentives are not enough. A proper stimulus package for COVID must go beyond fiscal policy and fiscal initiatives. We want to see a situation where the government has got a clearly focused and targeted sectoral intervention. Madam Speaker, we have put in place this Kazi Mtaani, which in essence, the government is telling us, is meant to put some money in the hands and pockets of the youth. Unfortunately, it is putting money in the hands and in the pockets of county commissioners, sub-county administrators, chiefs, and other people in the administration gravy train. The young people are being engaged in activities that cannot be audited. They are being engaged in activities that do not impart any special skill upon them. Madam Speaker, the President keeps talking about the Big Four agenda. And one of the key planks of Big Four is housing, where his target is to put up 500,000 new housing units. And this is a lovely idea. It has been used elsewhere. Singapore established the Singapore Housing Development Board. Through that Housing Development Board, Singapore managed to provide employment to the young people. It managed to skill the young people. It managed to develop housing that was cheap to an extent that to date, close to 90% of Singaporeans own their own houses. Can we engage our youth in Kazi Mtaani activities that can make them better than they were yesterday? Why can't we involve our youth in building new houses? Why can't we involve them in building roads? Why can't we involve them in agriculture, take them to Galana so that the dream of food security is achieved? We want to see a stimulus package, a COVID stimulus or a COVID incentive that is aligned to the Big Four. A COVID incentive that stimulates key sectors of the economy. A COVID incentive that creates jobs for young people. A COVID incentive that skills our young people. Madam Speaker, there are many issues, many lessons learned, but as far as devolution is concerned, there's still a lot of work to be done. And that is why the relevance of the Senate in the political arrangement of this nation cannot be understated. We have a lot of work to ensure that county governments are doing what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And there is no other visible service that county governments are expected to deliver more than healthcare. Unfortunately, what many of our county governments have done is to take us to the Indian situation. In India, people long ago gave up on their public healthcare system. They don't care. They would rather go to a private service provider than to a government hospital because they know they will never get services there. And it has become the order of the day. Here in Kenya, county health workers can be on strike for 2 months, Madam Speaker, and nobody cares because people are used to the failures of the health sector. Devolution was supposed to flag and to revive the health sector, and it should not be in the situation that we are in, that we still have less than 1,000 ICU beds across the country. Madam Speaker, my final point, as we look for a vaccine, where is the place of indigenous knowledge, indigenous African science and technology? Everyone is focusing on a vaccine that will be coming from the UK and the US. And yet we Africans, the history of vaccination, Africans had a much, you'd call it a primitive way of vaccination. Africa had a system of self-infection to create immunity. Even before the first European vaccine was created, Africans were practicing vaccination. Where is the agency in this country encouraging the adoption of indigenous African knowledge in the search for a vaccine and in the search of a sustainable solution and cure to the coronavirus? That is a challenge that I want this committee to look into and bring that relevant body so that we can engage our universities, our institutes of science and research, and find some synergies between them and our indigenous institutions so that we can have a homegrown solution that we can proudly sell to the world, that Kenya and Africa has come up with a solution to a virus that has afflicted and tortured the entire republic. Madam Speaker, I support this, and I do want to urge the government that even today with the renewed efforts to contain this virus, a lot more work needs to be done to revive the economy, to keep Kenyans healthy, and to give us hope that this country is not going to be something that will not be a going concern in future because of the debts that we have incurred. And Madam Speaker, let me urge extra responsibility on our part. I know many of us are silently suffering, but it is important that we announce when we find ourselves infected so that it is not stigmatized. That is how we managed the fight against HIV/AIDS. When we moved it from a matter of stigma, I support.
I see that there are no further requests to speak on this motion, and the mover is not here to reply. I therefore proceed to rule that this is a motion that does not require a vote by delegations, and we can therefore proceed to vote and I therefore proceed to put the question that the Senate adopts the 9th progress report of the ad hoc committee on the COVID-19 situation in Kenya, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 29 September 2020. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, recognition and appreciation to the elderly by county governments.
Senator Rose Nyamunga.
Can I get the mic? Thank you, Madam Speaker. It has been a very long wait from yesterday. Anyway, let us just continue. Aware that in 2006, the national government initiated the Elderly Persons Cash Transfer, or PTC program, popularly known as Pesa ya Mzee, which is an unconditional cash transfer program to destitute elderly persons above the age of 65 to cater for their subsistence needs, noting that the beneficiaries receive a monthly stipend of Kenya shillings 2,000 delivered every 2 months through appointed payments agents, and also entitled to medical insurance through the National Health Insurance Fund, HNIF. Concerned, however, that the program's credibility is marred by issues of delayed payments to beneficiaries, difficulties in processing of payments through the stipulated agents, and payments to unregistered persons. Now, therefore, the Senate recommends that the county governments complement the efforts of the national government and assist in resolving these challenges by, 1, developing legislation and policies to protect the elderly, including ensuring that all elderly persons in their counties are registered in the OPTC program, and 2, organize value addition mechanisms such as financial training to help the beneficiaries of the program to efficiently utilize this allowance. Madam Speaker, the issue of the elderly within our country has been a very touchy issue, because within our societies, we have a lot or several members of members of the society that we refer to as the senior members of our societies. In the developed countries, I must say that they have mechanisms of taking care of the elderly. And most of the developed countries, either they have the facilities for the elderly people, or there is a way of supporting them through their relatives, maybe by putting them in, taking care of them within their respective homes, because normally they plan for retirement and they plan for old age. But in our African setup, and more so in Kenya as a country, we don't do that. We cannot allow our elderly people to leave our homes to go to the elderly people's homes. I think in Nairobi, I've seen a few elderly people, a few elderly homes in Nairobi. But it is not a common thing, and it is not something that is easily and generally acceptable within our counties. Within our societies. So it makes it very difficult for us to take care of our elderly people, and even putting them in the elderly homes. It is not a given for us as at now. So I know the government of Kenya has tried its best, and I don't think many other nations around Africa are trying to do what Kenya is doing. The government is actually supporting them by giving some stipend, for example, for 2,000 shillings per month, or to be disbursed every 2 months. That means that every 2 months, the elderly who are listed, not all of them are listed, but the ones who are listed normally receive this amount of money. Madam Speaker, this money, most of it does not fall in the hands of the intended people, because most of the elderly, first of all, most of them are sickly, and they may not be having dependents, because some of them have lost their children to HIV. From what I know, most elderly people, they don't have their children. If they have their children, the children are equally in need of support. And those who live with their grandchildren, the grandchildren have just become wakoras, if I may use that word. Sometimes it goes to their money, to their phones directly, or sometimes they are required to go to the nearest facility like a shopping center to get their money. Most of the children that they are staying with or they're living with, they have a way of taking this money away from the actual dependents. So it makes life very difficult for the elderly to be supported in a proper way, the way the government should. So the government alone, the national government alone, cannot take care of all the elderly. If you look at the statistics, we have about 900,000 elderly people. That is people who are 70 years and above. But the listing should start at 65. But the people in Kenya who are above 70 are only 900, or 900,000. If you compare that one with the population of Kenya, which is about 47 million, you can see that we have a very small percentage of the elderly people. But at the same time, I recognize that the national government cannot take care of all these people. That is why we are appealing. I had an opportunity to go to the Ministry of Labor and the department that takes care of the elderly. The reason, the things that they are laying down on the table is that, yes, they can list all of them. There are about 900,000. The national government cannot do that. But the county government should come up with proper policies and a proper mechanism of listing them. The most important thing is to list them. Some people are not even listing because it goes through the chief, the sub-chief, the chief, and the DO, and so on. So some people, you find that some people are listed who are not even the elderly. And I can give an example of even my own village, where I know of particular people who have been listed by the chiefs or the sub-chiefs, but they don't even qualify. So we miss the target. But if this responsibility can be taken to the county governments, because nowadays we have the village elders, we have, it has been structured from the village elder to the ward admin, to the sub-county, and then to the county. It means that we can capture everybody who is elderly. And the government can take the percentage that they can take. But the rest of the percentage should be taken over by the county governments. Because if you look at those people, the way they live, I've had an opportunity when I was serving as the women representative, and I worked with an NGO and still work with them up to now. Miral is an NGO being supported by the Korean government. They took just one ward, and in that one ward, we identified most of the elderly and people living with disability. And then they put up structures of helping them. If you are too poor, they can support you even with somebody. If you are too old, somebody to take care of you, to cook for you, go get money for you. But how much can you trust if anybody speaks to take care of a person? So we can have our own structures within our villages because we have Nyumba Kumi. Within Nyumba Kumi, we know the elderly. We know the people living with disability. We know people who should be supported. That way, the national government may not do it very effectively, but the county governments can do by putting policies and structures in place to take care of the elderly. It is not anybody's choice. And I think when I was growing up, my biggest prayer was that I would live to see old age. So even as I desire to live to see old age, I may be just looking for a problem because I don't know what may happen when I get old. I may just be like any of those people that we see, and you see them and you pass them because you think they are not your relatives. So as a society, we must have a society. We must be in a society where we take care of each and every one of us and we become each person's keeper. Madam Speaker, what I have realized that in some areas, the people who receive this money are very industrious. They have utilize this money to the extent that now they tell the authorities that I don't think I need this money anymore. I've been able to set up something small for myself or buy an animal, a great animal. I'm getting enough milk, and with this milk, I can now take care of myself. Can you now move to the next person? In some areas, we have that. But in some areas, it is lacking. That is why it is important for us to do some financial training for these people with the money that they receive. Because some people, they think they will receive it like that forever. But I don't think it is money that should be received forever, because at 65, we are still strong enough. And most of the people, some of the people who are at home as elderly people, they are people who have just retired. But maybe they did not plan for their retirement. And now they end up being very, very poor when they should not have been poor, because nobody trained them to know that there is old age coming and there is retirement coming, and there will be a time that you will be on your own. Your children will no longer be there. So these are trainings that is lacking, and we need to put it in place so that even with this money, we can do activities like something like table banking, something like agribusiness, something like small-scale tradings. At 65, at 70, people can still do a lot of work, and more so in our villages, because at 75, we are not very old, even for being what we are and the type of food and the life that we have gone through, we are not very one unless you are very sick. If you are not sick and you are in good health, people can be trained, they can be shown that this money you are being given, you can utilize it, and also utilize the same people. Because I believe at 65 and above, the brain is still very intact. The brain is still very intact. It means that you can be, if you are a retired teacher, you can still be a teacher in the village, teaching mostly the education for the, what is it called? Elimu ya Gumbaru? Adult education. So the same people can be used for adult education. If you are maybe a retired judge or a retired magistrate, we can still use such people to help even in dispute resolution within our communities. I know the government, last time when we were in the National Assembly, trying to bring the courts to the villages. Who are we going to use at that level? We can plan to use the retired teachers, the retired magistrates, the retired nurses, doctors, the community health workers. The community health workers, after retiring, nurses or medical practitioners, after retirement, you can all still be used at the community level to add value to the elderly and add value to each other. So this is the gist of this motion. The idea is that, yes, we are very, very grateful that the government is doing something to help the elderly, but the county government should also come in to support or to complement where the government reaches. And secondly, to train these people to utilize this money in a manner that will add value to them. And once somebody feels that they are able enough, or they have set up a small business and they can move on, then it means that the money should now be given to somebody else. The economy, we know, is not good. We are plagued with several things. We have COVID with us. We have the economy performing very badly due to different reasons. But that is why we should be very prudent in the way we use our resources, both at the national and at the county levels. And with that, Madam Speaker, I know time is not on our side, but I would like to ask Senator Musuruve to second the motion.
Senator Musuruve.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity to second the motion by Senator Nyamunga. And I want to start, Honorable Speaker, by congratulating Senator Nyamunga for coming up with this statement. Indeed, this is a statement that is important. It is enshrined in our Constitution, Article 57. It is also enshrined in the BBI report. And I want to thank Baba Raila Amolo Odinga, together also with the President, for coming up with a handshake and ensuring that it is in the BBI report. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that the origin of this cash transfer started way back in 2006, as Senator Nyamunga has actually mentioned, and it started in 3 districts, the then districts, as an experiment, as a pilot project. It started in Thika, it started in Nyando, and then it was implemented in 2007 in Busia. Honorable Speaker, when it was implemented in Busia, it started as a rapid response initiative, and by that, the objective of starting this was to have a predictable way of ensuring that the elderly members of the society are actually taken care of. And Honorable Speaker, when we look at even the Constitution, Article 57, it actually says very clearly that the elderly have a right, need to be supported to fully participate in the societal activities, to fully pursue personal development, go for recreational activities, and all that. And Honorable Speaker, even though the Constitution says this, it is unfortunate that the elderly are forgotten, just as my fellow senators, Senator Nyamuga has said, they are forgotten, they are desperate, they live in abject poverty. And Honorable Speaker, I want to say that even the steering committee of the BBI report, when it went round gathering information about the elderly, this came out very clearly on page 8 of the BBI report, that the elderly feel that they are neglected, that even the efforts that they did during their active years are not being acknowledged, and they've expressed that they were helpless, they are hopeless. So these are some of the things that really came out during the BBI report. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that even though this program was started in 2007 before the Constitution, and the Constitution actually married these thoughts in Article 57. The BBI report also has echoed the same thing, that the elderly feel neglected. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, truly that the elderly go through enormous challenges. It is unfortunate that we forget our elderly. It is unfortunate that we forget the efforts they've done when they were they were active. During the diminishing returns, where the economy is so low and they're not even able to manage their lives, people forget about them. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, when you look at also the BBI report, it has been really stated clearly. And I want to thank, Baba Raila Amolo Odinga. He brought it very clearly that when we have to bring in the issue of national ethos, we have forgotten as a country, and he brought in the issue of Utu. The issue of feeling the oneness, the issue of feeling that we need to care about the elderly, the issue that we need to really be concerned about the elderly. Now, this is being echoed in the BBI report, Honorable Speaker.
There is an intervention order by Senator Farhia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think a mix of language is not allowed by our standing order. So, Senator Musuruve, you have said Utu without asking the permission of the Speaker to use a different language than the one you started speaking. I thank you.
Information from Senator Kajuang.
Madam Speaker, I wish to inform the distinguished senator and the whip of the majority that there are some things that are philosophies that cannot be rendered in any other language. Utu is a philosophy about oneness. It's about, there's no equivalent definition in the dictionary. And if there was one, then maybe she should help Parliament with an alternative.
Senator Locorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also wanted to inform Senator Farhia that there are certain things that really have no translation, and if you did, the meaning would be lost. And in her explanation, she actually tried to expound that in English, what the meaning of Utu is, caring for one another, especially old people. So you are out of order in that case. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It would have been desirable that the Speaker is the one to rule her out of order.
Okay, Senator Musuruve, kindly proceed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I want to thank my fellow senators, Senator Kajwang and Senator Lucorio, for coming out clearly to address the concerns of Senator Faria. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, and these are not my words, Honorable Speaker. When you look at the BBI report, page 33, it comes out clearly that to address the issue of the elderly, then we have to practice we have to practice the philosophy of Utu. Now, when we are talking of the philosophy of Utu, and I would wish also people would read and Kenyans would read this page 33, because it talks of the spirit of oneness. The spirit of shared destiny, honesty, compassion, respect, and care for others. And I remember, Honorable Speaker, it came out very clearly when Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, brought it out even in Naivasha that this is a spirit we need to actually bring out. So I want to say...
Order, Senator Musurube, there is another intervention by Senator Locorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to bring Senator Musuruve to order that we'll have an opportunity to discuss the BBI report. I know I'm also a supporter of BBI, but if she could focus on the motion brought by Senator Nyamunga, so that we don't lose the meaning and the issues that are in that motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Musuruve, please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I would like to tell my fellow Senator Locorio that I'm very much relevant and in order, because even when we are bringing motions of the House, they need to do a lot of reading. You read newspapers, journals, and all that. And you even see the media and bring in issues that will be relevant. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that we really have to ensure that we are oneness with our elders. We are taking care of them. We are concerned about them. This is what the motion of Senator Nyamunga is actually addressing. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that the elderly actually face a lot of challenges. And you will find that during their aging moment, as it has been said, their children have gone away from the families. Some of them are married, some of them are dead, and some of them are just living on their own. So the elderly are just left in their own world. A one world where you're just alone. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, when this program started, it was meant to actually support the vulnerables, the elderly who are destitute.
Order, Senator Musuruve. You'll have a balance of 13 minutes.